let's speak now to legal journalist Karyn Maughan. So Karyn, what should we understand about this latest development?
Well, I think, obviously the Hawks and the NPA needed to come out and give some form of response to the very damning findings that have been made against them by the State Capture Commission. Essentially the Commission saying in no certain terms that the NPA had failed fundamentally, I think was the adjective that was used, to fulfill its sovereign function to prosecute procurement corruption, so-called state capture corruption. Now, in the wake of that, the NPA acknowledging, saying that the NDPP, Shamila Batoy, has herself acknowledged that, the state was hollowed out by state capture, that there are all these challenges, but not really fundamentally addressing in any certain terms what exactly the NPA is going to do in terms of policy, in terms of actual practice, and in terms of, addressing what clearly seems to be a massive kind of competence and capacity constraints that it's currently dealing with. It also doesn't address what was at the heart of what the Zondo inquiry found, that there was simply no evidence of, high-level corruption and prosecutions for at least the last 10 years. And the only real record of any such case was, of course, the Sheikh ruling that was delivered in 2005, and only whistleblower Angelo Agrizzi being charged under the Public Finance Management Act, which explicitly deals with appropriate and legal management of public money.
You speak of competence and capacity constraints. It was last year when the NPA addressed the nation late last year, and Shamila Batoy is saying that the extent and nature of state capture corruption required additional and specialized skills and capacities. She also went through great lengths to explain that these are complex crimes and that they need one to take time before prosecuting.
Well, understandably so. But I think that, there are a number of cases where there are low-hanging fruit, where there is clear evidence available that can enable a quick and, successful prosecution. And that ranges in everything from certain of the state capture matters where there are clear-cut, there's clear-cut evidence to pursue a prosecution on. For instance, Dudu Myeni's conduct at the commission where she actually named a witness after being explicitly warned that she should not do so and would be a violation and contempt for the commission if she did. No action being taken there. The SA Express corruption that was detailed at length by the State Capture Inquiry report was reported to the police, to the Hawks, in great detail with a huge amount of evidence, something like 6 years ago. The inquiry itself raising serious concerns about why nothing had happened to those cases. The outer cases where they took Dudu Myeni to court over her directorship, over serving as a director, but fundamentally over her role as SAA board chairperson. The judge in that case recommending that she face potential prosecution for her conduct. Nothing has happened to those cases. And if one looks outside of the matrix of state capture as a kind of whole group of prosecutions, and I bring this again, refer back to this, the Steinhoff matter is a case in point. Marcus Jooste has been found guilty of insider trading by a fiduciary body. There's clear evidence that he sent SMSs to people close to him prior to the Steinhoff crash to tell them to sell their shares. Clear-cut case that the NPA can pursue, but it's not doing it. So, it may be that the NPA feels that in order to prosecute these cases, it must take on huge, multiple hundreds of charges. But in the end of the day, whether it gets a conviction on one charge or a conviction on 583 charges of corruption, the sentence will be the same. It'll be 15 years. So why not concentrate on the cases, the easy win cases that you can take to court and you can win, and start giving the South African public a sense that, in fact, people who have done unspeakable damage to this country will be held to account.
We've touched on competence and capacity issues. So what to make of the task force for state capture cases?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
As we've touched on capacity and competence issues, what should we make of this announcement of the task force for these cases of state capture?
Dudu, I think the most important issue, of course, will be who makes up this task force, how are they put together, who are they reporting to, and what in real terms are they expected to do. I mean, the Investigating Directorate was put in place to focus on so-called state capture crime. We now, of course, know that Karyn Maughan, the head of the ID, has resigned, apparently out of frustration. She hasn't publicly ventilated her reasons for doing so. Of course, the NPA is saying that this is not a crisis. It doesn't indicate a substantial problem in the fight against state capture. But, why... now we're going to have a task force to address cases that have been before the NPA, that the NPA has been aware of, that have been in the public domain for quite some time, which were all on every South African's TV screen for years during the state capture inquiry. One has to wonder, well, what is actually being, determined here? Is this a serious attempt to address the prosecution? Or is it just another scenario where the NPA is trying to kick the can further down the road at the cost of accountability and at the cost of South Africans' faith in law enforcement?
What to be done, right? I beg your pardon, because we have so many bodies that can uncover corruption and report on corruption. The NPA, at the end of the day, is the one tasked with prosecuting. So with all the problems that you have highlighted and all the issues that you have made us aware of, what do you perceive perhaps needs to be done?
Well, of course, we know that Zondo has recommended that a procurement corruption body be formed to monitor and police procurement corruption and have the ability to, in one instance, conclude so-called deferred prosecution agreements. So, plea deals with corporates that are implicated in state capture corruption. And he hasn't gone as far as to say that they will have the power to prosecute, but he has suggested that this body have very, very far-ranging powers. And I think in some respects that may be perceived, as some analysts have said, as a vote of no confidence in the NPA. But, the other issue is that I think there is a very real possibility that if the NPA fails in what's its sovereign function, which is taking on corruption, that entities like parastatals, like Eskom and Transnet, who have been looted to the tune of at least 47 billion rand in total, may well bring litigation to compel the NPA to make a decision on whether they'll pursue prosecution. And in the event that they don't, they may well decide to pursue private prosecutions themselves. That there might be litigation to compel like certain changes to the Criminal Procedure Act in terms of private prosecution. Because also the other thing to remember is that, you and I as ordinary tax-paying citizens don't have the power to push for private prosecution in certain cases because we don't have a so-called direct interest in the case. But I think there's a very distinct possibility that public interest bodies may turn around and say, all of us as taxpayers have an interest in the running and proper operation of parastatals. All of us have an interest in accountability, and that the terms under which private prosecution can and should occur may well be up for legal challenge. But the NPA faces a very real possibility that if it doesn't come to the table with clear policy, clear solutions, and cases that it's ready to take to court, whether in collaboration with private counsel, in collaboration with bodies, it's said that it's open to that kind of cooperation. It may well face a situation where it is being litigated against for failing to do its job.
Legal journalist Karyn Maughan, always a pleasure. Thank you.